that. There was also a little song playing in the background. Anybody remember that song? Kurt, can you come sing it for us? Never mind, doesn't matter. It's not going to be important. Other than Tom Bodett is the guy to thank.
Thank you.
Wow. I don't know what to think. Tom Bodett is the guy to thank when that song jumps into your mind, because that was 31 years ago, 1988, that came out. So you can thank him when that jumps in your head. What does it mean? We'll leave the light on for you. Well, it's pretty simple, right? It's a sign or a beacon to help somebody find their way back. Something kind of neat about it is that someone actually wants you to find their way back, which means you're loved. Leaving a light on is at the very heart of the story of the prodigal son. So take your Bibles and let's turn to Luke chapter 15, verse 11. Luke chapter 15, verse 11. And I'm sure I'll spill this, but it's okay. So Luke chapter 15, while you're turning there, there's a lot of people losing things. Anybody remember? The first is about a man who lost, I heard it, a sheep. This means fill in the blank, in case you, when I do that, to fill in the blank. The second parable is about a woman who loses a silver coin. Yeah, I bet it was one of those Susan B. Anthony, a little bit bigger than a quarter. I bet it was one of those. There's no telling how much money he lost paying $1 for something that was 25 cents. The third is a parable about a man that loses a son, but not just any son. What kind of son? A prodigal one. Does anybody know what that means? Prodigal? I looked it up. It's spending money or resources freely and recklessly, wastefully extravagant. Let's read the story. Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 11. Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring out the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf here, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry, would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I've been serving you. I've never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you're always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Now, first off, it's a big mistake to think of this story as one lost son, because this story is about two sons. It's about an older son and a younger son. And you and I are meant to contrast and compare the two. If we don't hear that story the way Jesus meant for us to, we miss that comparison. And we miss the point of the story. So I want to set the scene for you. This story just didn't suddenly come out of Jesus' mouth. There's a little history here. It'll help you and I understand why Jesus told this story. So let's read a little more in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. Then all the tax collectors and the sinners drew near to him to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, This man receives sinners and eats with them. This was kind of a powder keg moment. The verbs kind of set the scene for us. Jesus was teaching. The sinners were gathering. And the Pharisees were complaining. We're going to need another box of these crazy bracelets. Jesus was teaching the worst sort of people from society as they gathered to hear him. And of course, the Pharisees were muttering about what they deserved. Notice they can't even bring it on themselves to say his name. They say, this man. They can't believe he has no standards. He actually welcomes sinners, as in open arms. Come on in. I saved a seat for you right here. He invites them to eat with him. Meals were a lot more intimate back in this day. I read where they didn't even bring their iPhones to the table. One family turned the TV off. They didn't have restaurants on every corner. To be invited to eat with someone meant being invited to share food in their personal space. These Pharisees could not figure out how these people who were nothing like Jesus liked Jesus. It was an intense moment. Everyone's waiting to see how Jesus will react. Maybe he'll be a little apologetic. Maybe he'll build some bridges and back off of these relationships with the worst sort of characters. So this story is the culmination of what Jesus wants to say to these religious leaders. I want to be sure this morning that we understand this story and then draw a few things out of it. Important things I think Jesus is trying to tell us. It's a story related in two parts. Act 1, the lost younger brother. Act 2, the lost older brother. Act 1 starts with a speech. The younger brother comes to the father with this speech. It's in verse 12. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. Give me my share of the estate. Buddy taught a class in the auditorium a few weeks ago about this story. He talked about how that might not have been such an unusual request. But now that we know the whole story, it's a pretty terrible request. It's not like this son was some sort of an entrepreneur and he needed to raise a little capital to start some sort of a franchise, maybe a camel wash and wax stores all over town. But I don't think so. He had other plans. The estate isn't usually divided until the death of the owner. To ask for your inheritance while the father is still alive? Is that not to wish him dead? It's as if the younger son is saying, how long are you going to linger? And I have to wait to get my stuff. He's saying, I want my stuff, not you. I don't want family. I don't want this world. I don't want your religion. I want my share of the stuff, and then I want to leave. And what does this father do? It's at the end of verse 12. So he divided to them his livelihood. And the son goes off, he squanders everything. Now I know you knew it was coming, right? It always does. Verse 14, when he'd sunk so low that he had to hire himself out to feed the pigs. This was a trust fund baby. Is now feeding pigs. Now Jesus had stopped his story right here. The moral and immoral alike would have applauded. In fact, the dads would have gone home, backed up here, guys, and shared that story at the supper table. Children, let me tell you the story I heard today. This is what happens when you don't listen to your father. You will reap what you sow. You'll get what's coming to you. What goes around comes around. This kid got exactly what he had coming. But Jesus doesn't stop there. In verse 17, the son realizes how stupid he's been, and he comes up with a plan. And in verse 18, he puts that plan together. I'll go home to my father. I'll apologize. I'll ask for forgiveness and ask if he will make me like one of the hired servants. What he's asking is not even to be as good as a servant or a slave. A servant or a slave would live on the property. A hired person was just a craftsman who came from somewhere else. The son's plan was to have his father apprentice him. He knows he can't be the father's son anymore. He knows he can't live on the estate. I know I can't come back into the family. But this way I can come back and at least make some restitution. And with that plan, he heads home. And he arose and came to his father. When he was still a great way off, his father saw him, and man, was he mad. The father's thinking, well, he's blown it all. And now he's back for more. That's not what this dad did. He saw him and he had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. I think my dad would have fell on my neck. What Jesus says is the father raced. The actual translation is raced to the son. He sprinted to his son. Now in the Middle East, the father, is a man of dignity. This kind of man walks slowly, confidently. I think about John Wayne. Remember that walk? Slow, confident, unthreatened, kind of cool, tough, all in control, man among men. These men, they don't run. And just think for a minute, how could a man wearing robes even run anyway? Wouldn't you run right up the inside of that thing? No, he had to bend over and grab those robes and pull them up to take off running. But he raced that boy. Of all the stories told, this one has some unexpected results. This father does what most fathers would not do. He runs to that boy because he left the lights on for him. He never stopped loving that boy. He never stopped hoping he would come home. He checked that road 3 or 4 times a day, hoping to see his son. This is the parable of the father that runs to you. He's filled with compassion for you. He's not the I told you so father. No matter what country you've been hanging out in, when you take one step towards home, he gathers up those robes. He sprints toward you with reckless abandon. I mean, isn't Jesus God running to us? His lost son or daughter? Notice when the son starts to roll out his plan. The father won't hear it. Get the best robe and cover him up. Put a ring on his finger. He was not waiting for his son to get cleaned up. I'm not waiting while you take a bath. Get a robe and cover him up. You're not paying and you're not earning your way back into this family. I'm welcoming you back into this family. The father wants to celebrate. He wants to dance. Act 2. At the beginning of the story, Jesus says there was a man with 2 sons. The older brother has been out in the fields. When he hears what's happening, he's outraged. Now, Jesus' audience agrees and identifies with the older brother. I mean, does it seem like this is the only guy in the entire story that seems to be thinking clearly? Verse 28, but he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. You see what's going on, right? The older brother finds out from the servant what's going on, and the older brother asks the father, "You gave him the fatted calf? You never even gave me a goat. How could you squander that on him? I'm the good brother, the one you should have done that for. I'm the one that has obeyed you." Remember how the young son had a speech? Well, the older son had a speech as well, and it was just as big a slap in the face. The young son's speech began with "Father," while the older son's speech begins with "Look here." He shows no deference. He is saying, "Look you," verse 29. So he answered and said to his father, "Lo, these many years I've been serving you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time. And yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends." The truth is, the son doesn't know anything about obedience. He understands conformity. He knows to follow the rules. He's eaten up with pride, superiority, jealousy, bitterness. He is farther from his father at home than the younger son was in a foreign land. He's lost, and he's blind to it. His thought is, I'm the good son. I'm obedient, and I've never disobeyed. This father is humiliated as his son won't go into the greatest banquet he's ever thrown. Verse 28, but he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. Notice this father didn't apologize, and he didn't stop the party. And I'm sure the audience is sitting in silence at this point. They were stunned at this story of a brother who was lost and came home, and another son who stayed home but was just as lost. They were all waiting on the edge of their seats to hear what happens next, and Jesus stops. He never finished the story. It's a cliffhanger. Why would he do that? What point is he trying to make? Jesus is shattering every human idea about how people come to God. It was radical, scandalous. He's defining sin. The brilliance of the rhetoric of Jesus in this text. In the first act, the younger brother act, Jesus gives us a picture of traditional sin. No matter if you're moral or immoral, everyone reading this story knows that prostitution and walking off from your family is sin. In the second act, he turns the tables. At the end, you're left with 2 sons. One is very bad, one is very good. Both are alienated from the Father. Both wanted the Father's things. Neither wanted the Father. They both used the Father to get the things they wanted. What they really loved was not the Father, but the status and the wealth. One of them does it by being very bad. The other does it by being very good. But they're both lost. In the end, it's the younger brother that was saved. And at the end of the story, we have no indication what the older brother did. He may still be standing outside. Jesus is saying there's more than one way to be your own Savior and Lord. One way is to go off and live any way you want to. The other way is by being very moral, very obedient, and very religious. When all you can think is, if I'll just pray enough, and eat enough Lord's Suppers, and if I'm good, and if I read my Bible, and if I get baptized, and if I attend church, then God will bless me. Jesus might be your example, but He is not your Savior. You are. You're trying to be your own Savior. You're trying to avoid Jesus as your Savior by avoiding the sin. You won't need Him. You're trying to get what you want without Him. Religious people don't obey God to get God. They obey God to get things. Followers of Jesus fall in love with the Father they see in Jesus. They don't obey Him for things, but for His sake. They obey Him to delight Him. They obey Him to resemble Him. And they obey Him to know Him. Don't look for moral conformity. Long for the love of the Father. It's not the repentance that prompts the kiss. It's the kiss that motivates the repentance. What Jesus is saying is that there's something that happens to followers of mine. They see something in the heart of the one calling that melts and moves them. We talk all the time about how much we love God and how much we appreciate what He's done for us. And those things will change your life. But when you have that moment and you realize that you never want to be separated from God ever again, there's another change. It's another level of trust and faith that'll melt all your worries away. I read a story of a man named David Baker. He had 3 sons, all of which he eventually lost to cancer. When the oldest son graduated from high school, he left home immediately. He was running from his father, from his family, his home, and his faith. He moved into a home with some girls a few towns away, and they kind of lived commune style. Now, when I say he left, I mean he left. That first Christmas rolled around, and they didn't see him. David said that once late on a cold night, he got a call that his son had been in an accident. He had been driving drunk, and some people had been badly hurt, and the sheriff was holding him there in jail. So in the cold bitterness of that night, David drove over to the small town to check on his son. The deputy on duty said, "There's no Baker in jail." David thought, well, maybe I heard the caller wrong. So he drove to the next town. No Baker there either. It was very late, and he just could not think of anything else to do other than to drive over to the house that he believed his son had been living. They didn't even have locks on the doors. So he crept in, and after looking around for a bit, he spotted his son in a sleeping bag on a bare mattress on the floor. He was so overcome with emotion that in an effort to not wake his son, he just silently bent down and kissed him on the cheek. He said he looked just like the boy who had been at his house at what seemed like yesterday. In the months that came, the son would just show up at the house. He shocked them all on one visit with the announcement that he decided to go to school. He wanted to become a minister. And then the cancer came. Shortly before he died, while visiting with his parents, David and his son went outside to walk. As they walked along, and in that silence, he just had to ask his son, what was it that brought you back? The boy seemed surprised and asked his father, you mean you don't know? Do you remember the night that the police called to tell you that I'd been in an accident? It wasn't the police that called. It was me and some of my friends playing a terrible trick on you. But when I realized you'd been driving around looking for me in the late hours of the night, and when you found me, quietly bent down, kissed me. I knew I never wanted to be away from you again. I think that was my moment. I don't know which brother you might be. If you're the younger brother type, then you'll realize that self-indulgence will not work. That squandering what God has given you will only leave you left with feelings of guilt and regret. It always ends in a pigsty, hungry and alone. Maybe you're the older brother type. Are you doing things and participating in things in a vain effort to earn something that you just can't pay off? I'm in no way saying that good works are not great. I'm just saying if they're for the wrong reasons, it won't work. I can't tell you when your moment will be, but I do know from the story of the prodigal son that it's not the repentance that prompts the kiss, it's the kiss from the Father that prompts the repentance. God is constantly watching that road. He's waiting for you to turn toward Him. It doesn't matter where you've been, what you've been doing. He can't wait to pick up those robes and sprint to you. This family here needs all of us to be all in. There's so much work to do. Do you need prayers of this church for anything today? We will take you right where you are as well. And we'll do all we can to get you to a relationship with God that makes you say, I just can't stand the thought of ever being apart from you again.